Before sunrise, an entire continent held its breath. Outside the walls of Vienna, tens of thousands waited, soldiers, empires, destinies, stacked on a single morning. If the city fell, Europe would change forever. If it survived, history would turn in a direction no one could fully see yet. This was not just a battle of armies, but of patience, fear, and timing. One delayed decision, one unexpected charge, one city that refused to disappear. What happened here in 1683 did not just save Vienna, it quietly reshaped Europe's future in ways we are still living with today. You don't hear the cannons at first, you hear hunger. It's the sound of an empty stomach tightening, of bread rationed down to crumbs, of water carried carefully because tomorrow may bring nothing at all. Inside the walls of Vienna, time has slowed to something cruel and heavy. Days don't move forward, they press down. You wake before sunrise, not because you're rested, but because sleep has become shallow and fragile. Somewhere beyond the walls, an empire waits patiently for you to starve. It is the summer of 1683, and Europe is holding its breath. Vienna is surrounded, not by bandits, not by rebels, but by one of the most powerful military forces the world has ever seen, the Ottoman Empire. Their tents stretch across the plains like a second city, vast and organized, banners fluttering calmly in the heat. They aren't rushing, they don't need to. They believe time is on their side. Inside the city, reality feels very different. The air smells of smoke and sickness. Wounded men lie where they fell because there's nowhere else to put them. Civilians sleep in churches, in cellars, anywhere stone feels thick enough to stop a cannonball. Each night, explosions shake the ground as Ottoman miners dig tunnels beneath the walls, packing them with gunpowder, trying to tear the city open from below. Every morning, defenders check the walls to see what still stands. And every morning, something is missing. Vienna is not supposed to fall. It's more than a city. It's a gate. If it opens, there is nothing solid left between the Ottoman army and the heart of Europe. No mountain strong enough. No army ready enough. No city prepared to stop what comes next. That knowledge weighs on everyone. Soldiers, priests, bakers, children. You're not fighting just for Vienna. You're fighting for time. Outside the walls, the Ottoman camp hums with confidence. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha walks among his commanders, certain of victory. He doesn't want to destroy the city. He wants it intact, a jewel added to the empire, proof that the Ottomans have reached deep into Europe itself. This is why he waits. But inside Vienna, waiting is killing them. Food grows scarce, horses are slaughtered, rats disappear, leather is boiled to make soup. Disease spreads quietly, slipping through crowded shelters faster than any army could. Yet still, the city holds. Men patch walls in the dark. They fill craters with debris and broken furniture. They fight underground battles with picks and blades in narrow tunnels filled with smoke and screams, collapsing mines just seconds before detonation. Every day feels borrowed. Every night feels final. And yet somewhere far away help is moving. Slowly, painfully, across forests, rivers, and mountains, an army gathers, not united by language or culture, but by fear of what happens if Vienna falls. Poles, Germans, Austrians, soldiers who have never fought side by side, march toward a city they have never seen. At their head rides a man history will later mythologize, King Jan III, Sobieski of Poland. But for now, he is just another commander racing against time. Vienna doesn't know this yet. Inside the city, no one knows if relief will come. No signal arrives. No messenger breaks through the Ottoman lines. Hope exists only as an idea, fragile, dangerous to hold on to. So people focus on surviving the day. Another explosion rocks the walls. Dust fills the air. A section collapses. Men rush forward, dragging stones, bodies, anything they can use to block the breach. Muskets fire. Screams echo. Smoke blinds everyone. For a moment, it feels like this is it, the final break. The moment the city spills open. But somehow, again, it holds. The Ottomans pull back. Not defeated, just patient. This siege isn't about courage versus cowardice. It's about endurance versus inevitability. And Europe is watching from a distance, unsure whether Vienna will be remembered as the place where the advance was stopped, or the place where the gate finally broke open. As the days stretch on, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. If Vienna falls, history will not slowly change. It will snap, and when it does, nothing west of these walls will ever feel the same again. Time inside Vienna begins to lose meaning. Days are counted not by dates, but by how much of the wall still exists, by how many men did not wake up, by how many explosions shook the ground during the night. The city is slowly being hollowed out from below, from within, from the mind. Ottoman miners are everywhere now. You cannot see them, but you can feel them. A faint vibration beneath your feet, a strange echo when you strike the ground. Soldiers press their ears to the earth in silence, listening for the scrape of metal on stone. When they hear it, panic spreads quietly, efficiently. There is no shouting. Shouting wastes air. Shouting wastes strength. Countermines are dug blindly. Tunnels chasing tunnels, in suffocating darkness. Men fight underground with knives and bare hands, faces blackened with soot, lungs burning. Sometimes a tunnel collapses and seals everyone inside. Sometimes gunpowder ignites too early and erases everything an enemy and defender alike. Above ground, the city shrinks. Entire streets are abandoned because they sit too close to the walls. Buildings are torn apart deliberately, their stones reused to reinforce defenses. Churches lose pews, homes lose doors. Vienna is cannibalizing itself just to remain standing. Food is no longer scarce, it is gone. What remains is distributed with ruthless efficiency. Bread that once fed a family for a day now feeds one person. Meat is a memory. Wine is diluted with water. Even the wealthy eat the same thin rations as everyone else. Because hoarding would spark riots, and riots would finish what the Ottomans started. Disease spreads quietly. Dysentery, fever, infections that would normally be treatable now turn fatal. There are no clean bandages left, no space to isolate the sick. Bodies are buried hastily or not at all, because digging graves wastes strength better spent holding the walls. Yet discipline does not break. This is what surprises the Ottomans most. From their camp, Vienna should already be collapsing. Starvation should have opened the gates. Fear should have done the work of artillery. But the city continues to resist, stubbornly, irrationally, as if sheer refusal might bend reality. Kara Mustafa Pasha grows impatient. He has everything he needs: troops, cannons, time. But impatience is a dangerous emotion for a man who believes history already belongs to him. He begins to push harder, ordering more aggressive mining, more bombardments, more pressure. Still, he does not storm the city. He wants Vienna intact. That decision will matter later. Inside the walls, the defenders sense a shift. Attacks come more frequently. Breaches are larger. Repairs take longer. Each success feels thinner than the last. And still no help comes. If relief is coming, it is late. Far from Vienna, the relief army crawls across Europe like something half-alive. Different commanders argue over rank. Supplies run low. Roads turn to mud. Rivers flood. Men desert. Others collapse from exhaustion. This is not a heroic march, it is logistical suffering stretched across hundreds of miles. King Jan Sobieski rides with the army, visible, deliberate, understanding that morale is as fragile as supply lines. He knows the stakes. Even if the men around him only feel hunger and sore feet, Vienna cannot hold forever. He knows this. Back in the city, rumors spread. Some say help is coming. Others say Europe has already decided Vienna is expendable. Priests preach endurance. Officers threaten punishment for defeatism. Civilians stop listening altogether. Then something changes. One morning, after weeks of explosions, the Ottomans achieve what they have been working toward all along. A massive mine detonates beneath the Lebel bastion. The ground erupts. Stone flies. A section of wall disappears in smoke and dust. This is not a crack. This is a wound. Ottoman troops surge forward, confident that the city has finally broken. Fighting spills into the breach. It is close, chaotic, desperate. Men stab blindly. Muskets misfire. Smoke suffocates everyone equally. For hours, it teeters. This is the moment history nearly tilts. But once again, Vienna refuses to die. Defenders throw everything they have into the gap barrels, carts, rubble, bodies. They build a wall out of ruin, while standing inside the ruin itself. By nightfall, the breach is sealed just enough to hold just enough. The city survives another day. But everyone knows the truth now. This cannot continue much longer. There is no margin left, no hidden reserve, no miracle inside the walls. If Vienna is saved, it will not be by endurance. It will be by arrival. Outside the city, the Ottoman camp begins to notice signs they had not expected. Scouts report movement in the hills, columns of dust, campfires where none should be. At first, Kara Mustafa dismisses them. Surely, relief would have arrived sooner. Surely, it is too late. But doubt creeps in. He has waited weeks to preserve Vienna. In doing so, he may have preserved just enough time for Europe to respond. As September approaches, the air changes. Inside Vienna, defenders climb the towers and scan the horizon, not expecting hope, but unable to stop looking. Every morning could be the last. Every night could be the final bombardment. And then on the distant ridgelines beyond the forests something glints. Not smoke, not fire, metal, banners, an army. Vienna has not been forgotten. And now, the siege is about to become something far more dangerous than starvation. It is about to become a battle. From the hills above Vienna, the view is almost unreal. The city below looks small, wounded, barely alive. Smoke drifts lazily from shattered rooftops. The walls are scarred, patched with rubble and desperation. From this distance, you can't hear the hunger, the coughing, the prayers whispered into empty air. You only see a city that has been held together by will alone. Behind you, a relief army stretches across the ridges like a long, uneven shadow. This isn't one army, it's many, forced to walk together. Imperial troops from the Holy Roman Empire stand beside Bavarians, Saxons, and Franconians. Polish banners fluttered near German ones, their colors clashing, their languages unfamiliar. They don't march in perfect rhythm, they don't trust each other completely. Old rivalries simmer just beneath the surface, but today none of that matters. Ahead of them lies Vienna. Below them waits the Ottoman Empire. Kara Mustafa Pasha does not panic when he receives confirmation. He should have, but he doesn't. Instead, he feels insulted. For weeks, Vienna has been on the brink of collapse. One final push could end it. One decisive assault could deliver the city intact, exactly as he promised to the Sultan. Turning to face the relief army means abandoning that goal, risking everything in open battle. And yet, he can't ignore them. Reluctantly, he orders troops to reposition. Trenches that once faced inward toward Vienna are now extended outward. Cannons are shifted, lines are redrawn. The siege, which had been so methodical and controlled, becomes suddenly chaotic. Inside Vienna, the change is felt immediately. The constant bombardment slows. For the first time in months, the city experiences something close to silence. Not peace, just absence. Men emerge cautiously from shelters. Officers climb the walls again. Word spreads fast, whispered and then shouted. They're here. Some cry, some laugh, some simply sit down, too exhausted to react. Hope doesn't explode inside Vienna. It seeps in slowly, cautiously, like light entering a sealed room. But hope doesn't mean safety. The Ottomans still surround the city. Their numbers remain overwhelming. If the relief army fails, Vienna will fall within days, perhaps hours. On the hills, the commanders meet. Plans are drawn in dirt and charcoal. The terrain is studied carefully. Forests, slopes, ravines, all of it matters. The Ottomans are experienced, disciplined, and still confident. Any mistake will be punished immediately. The Polish king, Jan Sobieski, listens more than he speaks. He understands cavalry. He understands timing. He understands that this battle will not be won by force alone, but by shock. The Ottomans expect a conventional assault. Infantry grinding forward, artillery exchanges, slow attrition. What they do not expect is patience. For 2 days, the relief army advances carefully, securing high ground, pushing Ottoman outposts back inch by inch. Skirmishes erupt in the woods. Muskets crack. Men fall and vanish into the undergrowth. Each step forward tightens the noose. Kara Mustafa grows uneasy. His camp is enormous, tens of thousands of men, supplies, animals, tents, stretching as far as the eye can see. It was designed for a siege, not for a sudden defense against an army emerging from the hills. He delays again. This too will matter. The morning of September 12th arrives, cool and clear. Mist clings to the valleys. The relief army forms its lines in silence. Armor is checked. Blades are tested. Horses snort and stamp, sensing the tension. Priests move among the men, offering blessings, final words, and quiet reassurance. Below, the Ottomans prepare as well, though with less clarity. Orders contradict each other. Units reposition without fully understanding why. Some soldiers still believe Vienna will fall today regardless. The battle begins not with thunder, but with movement. Imperial infantry advances first, pushing downhill into the Ottoman lines. Muskets fire, drums beat. The clash is brutal and immediate. Smoke thickens the air. Men fight and fall in uneven terrain, slipping on grass damp with dew and blood. For hours, the fighting grinds forward and back. Neither side breaks. The Ottomans counterattack fiercely, using experience earned across decades of conquest. They bend the imperial lines, threaten flanks, and press hard where they sense weakness. It is everything Kara Mustafa hoped for, a controlled resistance that might still lead to victory. But the battle is only half visible. High above the main fighting, hidden behind the forests and ridgelines, something massive waits: Sobieski's cavalry. Thousands of horsemen stand assembled in silence, the largest cavalry force ever gathered in Europe. Winged hussars in gleaming armor sit motionless on powerful horses, their long lances angled skyward, the famous wings frames of feathers attached to their backshift softly in the breeze. They have not moved all day. They have waited. Time stretches. Below, Ottoman attention is fixed forward, locked onto the infantry battle. Reserves are committed. Lines are stretched. Fatigue creeps in. Victory feels possible. Just one more push, one more effort. Then, the signal comes. A horn sounds. High on the hill, the cavalry begins to move. At first, it is slow, controlled. Then faster. Lines form. Lances lower. The ground begins to tremble. Not violently, but unmistakably. The sound carries. Ottoman soldiers turn. What they see defies expectation. An entire hillside is alive. Steel flashes in the sun. Banners snap. Feathers ripple. The charge is not chaotic, it is disciplined, vast, unstoppable. And then they run. The charge accelerates downhill, thousands of hooves pounding as one. The sound is no longer individual. It is a single, roaring force, growing louder, closer, inescapable. The Ottoman lines hesitate. Hesitation becomes fear. Fear becomes collapse. When the cavalry hits, it is like a door being kicked in by history itself. Lines shatter. Men are thrown aside. Camps are overrun. Panic spreads faster than any command can stop it. Kara Mustafa watches his army unravel, stunned by the speed, the violence, the sudden reversal. Vienna's defenders see it from the walls. They do not cheer. They stare. Because they understand, even in that moment, that they are witnessing something rare. Not just a victory, but a turning point. An event that would echo through the centuries, deciding the fate of an empire and a continent. The Ottoman camp does not fall all at once. It dissolves. Tents that once stood in careful rows collapse under trampling feet. Supply wagons overturn, spilling grain, powder, and weapons into the dirt. Horses bolt without riders. Officers shout commands that vanish into noise and smoke. The battle has stopped being a battle. It has become flight. Kara Mustafa Pasha retreats toward his command tent, trying to impose order on a world that no longer listens. He sends messengers. He orders reserves forward. He demands discipline. But discipline cannot survive panic, and panic has already infected everything. The cavalry charge has broken more than lines, it has broken belief. Ottoman soldiers had believed the relief army would be cautious, slow, predictable. They had believed Vienna was already theirs in all but name. Now, in the span of minutes, those beliefs are gone. Men drop weapons to run faster. Some attempt to regroup near the Danube. Others flee south without direction, abandoning artillery they cannot move in time. Janissaries once feared across continents are crushed beneath horses or scattered into forests. By afternoon, the battlefield belongs entirely to the Allies. Sobieski rides forward, his armor dusted, his horse breathing hard. He does not celebrate yet. He surveys the ground, the fleeing enemy, the shattered camp. He understands that victory is fragile until it is complete. Orders go out immediately. The pursuit begins. Imperial troops press into the Ottoman camp, capturing supplies that will feed armies for months. Cannons are seized. Standards fall. The wealth of the siege gold, silk, food, ammunition lies abandoned. Inside Vienna, the gates finally open. Men who had not stood upright in weeks stumble out onto the fields. Some kneel, some touch the ground, as if to confirm it is real. Others embrace soldiers they have never met, laughing and crying in the same breath. The city is saved. But the consequences are only beginning. Kara Mustafa retreats in disgrace. The army that marched confidently toward Vienna is now a wounded mass, retreating under constant pressure, harried by cavalry, bleeding men, and morale with every mile. He knows the truth, even if he will not speak it aloud. Failure is unforgivable. In the Ottoman world, losing a battle is one thing. Losing Vienna, losing the moment promised to the Sultan, is something else entirely. Back in Vienna, The Allies meet. The atmosphere is cautious, formal, heavy with unspoken tension. Old rivalries do not disappear overnight, but something has changed. For the first time in generations, the Ottoman advance has been decisively stopped, not delayed, not redirected, but broken. News spreads fast. Couriers ride hard across Europe. Bells ring in cities that had been quietly preparing for siege themselves. Churches hold Thanksgiving services. Pamphlets are printed, paintings commissioned, songs composed. Vienna becomes more than a city. It becomes a symbol. For the Ottoman Empire, the shock is profound. The myth of unstoppable expansion fractures. Borders that had crept steadily westward now begin to pull back. Allies hesitate. Subjects question. Enemies grow bold. Within months, Kara Mustafa Pasha is executed by order of the Sultan, strangled with a silk cord, a punishment reserved for great failures. His death does not restore what was lost. The balance of power has shifted. What follows is not peace, but transformation. The Holy League forms uniting powers that once distrusted each other deeply. Campaigns push south into Hungary and the Balkans. Fortresses fall one by one. The Ottomans fight back fiercely, but now they fight defensively, reacting instead of advancing. Europe feels different, more confident, more aggressive, more certain of its future. And Vienna, scarred and exhausted, rebuilds. Walls are repaired, churches restored, streets cleared of debris and memory alike. Life returns slowly, carrying with it stories of survival and divine intervention, courage and luck, strategy and timing. But beneath the celebration lies something quieter, a realization. History does not change because of destiny alone. It changes because of hesitation, because Kara Mustafa delayed one assault too many, because the relief army chose patience over panic, because a cavalry charge waited until the exact moment it could no longer be stopped. The Battle of Vienna was not just a clash of armies. It was a moment when the direction of continents tilted, and once tilted, it did not tilt back. In the months that followed the battle, the world does not pause to reflect. It moves. Armies march. Treaties are whispered into existence. Borders that had seemed fixed for generations begin to feel uncertain, almost temporary. The victory at Vienna does not remain a single event, it becomes momentum. For the Holy Roman Empire, survival turns quickly into ambition. Leopold I, once a ruler preparing to flee his capital, now sees opportunity. Imperial generals push south, retaking towns that had lived under Ottoman control for decades. Fortresses that once felt untouchable fall after sieges measured in weeks rather than years. Each victory builds confidence. Each retreat weakens the Ottoman grip. The Holy League grows stronger, not because its members trust each other, but because they now share something powerful. Proof that the Ottoman army can be beaten decisively. Proof that expansion is no longer inevitable. In Poland, Jan Sobieski becomes a living legend. Paintings portray him as Europe's savior, a mounted warrior chosen by fate. Songs spread his name far beyond his own borders. Yet politically, his triumph brings little reward. Poland remains divided internally, its nobles jealous, its unity fragile. History rarely rewards heroes fairly. Still, Sobieski understands his place. He has altered the course of events. Even if the benefits do not last for his own kingdom, they will echo across generations. For the Ottomans, the aftermath is brutal. Defeat breeds suspicion. Commanders are questioned. Loyalty is examined. The empire does not collapse, but it changes tone. Where once it expanded with confidence, it now fortifies, negotiates, hesitates. The loss at Vienna exposes cracks long ignored. Supply lines strained by distance. Command structures slowed by politics. A reliance on reputation rather than adaptation. These weaknesses do not destroy the empire overnight, but they begin to define its future. In Hungary, the impact is immediate. Town by town, control shifts. Christian populations that had lived under Ottoman rule for generations experience upheaval once again. Some celebrate liberation. Others fear retaliation, conscription, and instability. Empires change hands, but ordinary people always pay the price. Vienna itself becomes a laboratory of memory. The city leans into its survival story. Architecture changes. Baroque churches rise where destruction once stood, heavy with symbolism, light order, triumph over chaos. Coffeehouses appear, inspired by goods left behind in the Ottoman camp. Even daily habits begin to carry traces of the enemy that almost won. The siege becomes identity. Parents tell children where they hid. Veterans point to scars. Priests preach about divine intervention. Artists freeze moments of fear and victory in paint. Yet beneath the pride lies a quieter truth. Europe has crossed a line. For centuries, the continent defined itself by defense, holding back invaders, surviving waves of conquest. After Vienna, that mindset shifts subtly but permanently. The question becomes, not will we survive, but how far can we push back? That question reshapes politics. New wars ignite, not out of desperation, but opportunity. Diplomacy hardens. Religious conflict evolves into territorial ambition. The language of survival gives way to the language of dominance, and it all traces back to a single September morning. Vienna did not just survive. It taught Europe that history could be reversed, that momentum could be stolen. That fear, once broken, does not easily return. But momentum has its own cost. As Europe grows bolder, violence spreads south and east. Borderlands become battlefields. Cities are besieged again and again. Civilians endure forced migrations, shifting loyalties, and endless uncertainty. The victory at Vienna ends one era, but it opens another, just as unforgiving. Empires do not vanish, they adapt. And the Ottoman Empire, wounded but alive, begins preparing for a long, slow struggle against a world that now believes it can win. The war that follows Vienna does not arrive with fanfare. It settles in years, stretch forward, heavy with marching feet, supply trains, and exhausted negotiations. What began as a dramatic defense becomes a prolonged struggle, fought across plains, rivers, and fortresses that few outside the region can name. This is the Great Turkish War, and it reshapes Eastern Europe slowly, deliberately, and painfully. Imperial forces press deeper into Hungary, reclaiming towns that have lived under Ottoman rule for over a century. Each recaptured city reveals layers of history: churches turned into mosques, streets renamed, customs blended beyond easy separation. Liberation is complicated. Some populations welcome the change, others mourn the stability they once had. Power shifts, but uncertainty remains constant. The Ottomans fight back with discipline and resilience. They lose ground, but not pride. Their armies adapt, fortify, counterattack. The empire is wounded, not broken. Battles are won and lost on both sides, though the overall direction is unmistakable. Southward, the Habsburg frontier expands. Northward, alliances deepen. Venice seizes territory along the Adriatic. Russia watches carefully, learning from Ottoman weaknesses, preparing for its own expansion south. The balance of power across Europe begins to feel less fluid. More structured empires consolidating, borders hardening. Vienna becomes a command center. Generals come and go. Maps change constantly. The city, once nearly lost, now directs campaigns hundreds of miles away. Its survival has transformed it from target to anchor. But war reshapes societies as much as borders. Villages empty. Fields go untended. Generations grow up knowing nothing but conflict. Soldiers march past the same towns repeatedly, fighting over land that feels cursed by repetition. Faith still matters, but less than before. Religion remains a banner, but strategy now rules decisions. Economics, logistics, and diplomacy guide wars more than prophecy. Vienna marks this shift quietly, without declaration. By the end of the conflict, the Treaty of Karlowitz redraws the map. The Ottomans cede vast territories in Hungary and Transylvania. Their European frontier pulls back significantly for the first time. What had once been steady expansion becomes managed retreat. This is not collapse, it is contraction. For Europe, the treaty confirms a new reality. The Ottoman Empire is no longer the dominant force in the region. It remains powerful, respected, feared, but no longer unstoppable. For the Ottomans, the psychological impact is enormous. An empire built on momentum struggles when momentum fades. Internal reforms are discussed, delayed, argued over. The world is changing faster than institutions can adapt. And all of it traces back to Vienna. Not just the battle, but the idea. The idea that power can shift suddenly, that history is not fixed, that one decision, one delayed assault, one perfectly timed charge can redirect centuries. Vienna 1683 becomes more than memory. It becomes reference. Whenever borders change, whenever empires stall, whenever confidence turns to caution. This is the shadow of that morning, a reminder that dominance is temporary, that survival can become leadership, and that even the mightiest forces can be turned not by destiny, but by timing. Have you ever heard of a battle that not only changed the course of a war, but shaped the destiny of entire continents for centuries to come. Today, we're diving deep into the Battle of Vienna, fought on September 12, 1683. This wasn't just another clash of armies. It was a pivotal moment that left a lasting legacy on both Europe and the Ottoman Empire. So, grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's journey back in time. In the summer of 1683, a massive Ottoman army, numbering well over 100,000 soldiers and led by Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, laid siege to Vienna. The city was the heart of the Habsburg monarchy, a crucial strategic and symbolic prize. For 2 long months, Vienna's defenders held on desperately, but their supplies were dwindling and their walls were crumbling under constant bombardment. It seemed like the fall of the city was just a matter of time. The fate of Central Europe hung precariously in the balance. But then, on the horizon, came the largest Christian relief force ever assembled. A coalition army, known as the Holy League, was marching to Vienna's rescue. It was led by the charismatic Polish king, John III, Sobieski. This wasn't just a Polish army. It included troops from the Holy Roman Empire, Bavaria, Saxony, and many other German states. They gathered on the Kollenberg Heights, overlooking the besieged city, a truly cinematic moment. On the morning of September 12th, the battle began. It was a long, brutal day of fighting, but the decisive moment, the one that has echoed through history, was the charge of the Polish winged hussars. Imagine this: thousands of heavily armored cavalrymen, with massive wings attached to their backs, that whistled in the wind, thundering down the hillsides, straight into the heart of the Ottoman camp. It was one of the largest cavalry charges in history, a terrifying and awe-inspiring sight that shattered the Ottoman lines and morale. By nightfall, the siege was broken, and the Ottoman army was in full retreat. So, what was the aftermath? For Europe, the victory at Vienna was monumental. It marked the definitive end of the Ottoman Empire's expansion into the continent. Never again would they pose a serious threat to Central Europe. The battle boosted the confidence of European powers and initiated the Great Turkish War, which lasted for 16 years and saw the Habsburgs reconquer vast territories, including most of Hungary. Vienna became a symbol of Christian European resilience and unity against a common foe. The victory was celebrated across the continent, with King Sobieski famously paraphrasing Julius Caesar, saying "Veni vidi Dios visit," I came, I saw, God conquered. This moment helped solidify a collective European identity, and Sobieski was hailed as the savior of Christendom. Now, let's flip the coin and look at the Ottoman perspective. For them, the defeat at Vienna was a catastrophe of epic proportions. It wasn't just a military loss. It was a profound psychological blow. The failure to capture the Golden Apple, as they called Vienna, signaled the beginning of a long and painful decline. The myth of Ottoman invincibility was shattered. The defeat led to a period of internal turmoil. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha paid the ultimate price. He was executed in Belgrade on the Sultan's orders for his failure. The loss triggered a crisis of confidence within the empire's leadership and military, from which they never fully recovered. For the next 2 centuries, the Ottoman Empire would be known as the sick man of Europe, slowly losing territory and influence until its eventual collapse after World War I. The legacy of the Battle of Vienna is complex and has been used and sometimes misused by different groups over the centuries. It's been invoked as a symbol of the clash of civilizations, a narrative of East versus West, Christianity versus Islam. But looking back, it's also a story of incredible alliances, desperate courage, and a single day that dramatically altered the geopolitical map. It wasn't just a victory for one side and a defeat for the other. It was a turning point that set both Europe and the Ottoman Empire on entirely new paths, shaping the world we live in today. It reminds us how a single event can ripple through time, leaving an indelible mark on the memory of nations. What do you think is the most significant legacy of this battle? Let me know in the comments below. It's a fascinating topic with so many layers to explore. While emperors and generals argue over maps, ordinary lives continue in the long shadow of Vienna. For the soldiers who survived, the war does not end with victory. Many return home carrying wounds that never heal properly. Some walk with permanent pain. Others wake at night, startled by sounds that no longer exist. They are celebrated briefly, then quietly forgotten as attention shifts to new conflicts and new ambitions. Payment is late, or never arrives. Veterans sell pieces of captured equipment to survive. A few are granted small pensions or land, but most drift back into labor. carrying memories they cannot share with people who never saw the siege. In Vienna itself, survival reshapes daily life. Families return to damaged homes, patching walls with whatever materials remain. Entire neighborhoods smell of smoke and damp stone for years. Children grow up playing among ruins, hearing stories of hunger and fear as casually as bedtime tales. Food slowly becomes abundant again, but habits do not change. People hoard, they measure meals, they save scraps long after the threat has passed. Hunger teaches lessons that comfort cannot erase. Merchants, to feel the change. Trade routes reopen, then expand. Goods once cut off by war flow are gangrene, wine, textiles, metalwork. New products appear, brought by armies in contact with distant regions. Coffee, unfamiliar and bitter, finds its way into daily life, transforming social spaces into quiet places of conversation and reflection. These small changes matter. They turn survival into routine. Across the countryside, however, recovery is slower. Villages burned during campaigns are not rebuilt. Fields remain empty, where families fled or died. Borders shift, and with them, loyalties. Some people suddenly live under new rulers without ever moving. Laws change, taxes change, language in official documents changes. For many, identity becomes flexible. They learn to adapt, to obey, to endure. Empires rise and fall, but ordinary people remain where they are, adjusting to whoever claims authority next. In Ottoman lands, similar stories unfold. Retreating soldiers return to towns, carrying shame rather than celebration. Families listen quietly, asking careful questions. Defeat is not discussed openly, but its presence is felt in tighter budgets, heavier oversight, and growing uncertainty. Trade slows in some regions, shifts in others. Administrators grow cautious. Innovation is debated, resisted, delayed. Change comes, but unevenly. Across both worlds, Vienna becomes something personal, not a battle, a memory, a before and after line that shapes choices without always being named. People measure safety differently. Parents teach children when to hide and when to flee. Communities rebuild walls and store supplies, just in case. History, from this level, feels less dramatic. It is slow. It is practical. It is made of small decisions repeated thousands of times. Vienna 1683 did not only redraw borders, it rewrote expectations. It taught ordinary people that stability is temporary, that power can reverse quickly, and that survival depends on preparation as much as bravery. Long after the cannons rust and the banners fade, these lessons remain. They pass quietly from one generation to the next, carried not in books or monuments, but in habits, fears, and unspoken understanding. As the years turn into decades, the true weight of Vienna 1683 becomes clearer. Not in celebration, and not in fear, but in structure. The world that emerges afterward feels more rigid, more organized, less fluid than before. Borders that once shifted with every campaign begin to harden. Empires grow more cautious, measuring strength not just by armies, but by administration, finance, and diplomacy. For Europe, Vienna marks the beginning of confidence without recklessness. Expansion continues, but with planning rather than impulse. Power is no longer assumed to be permanent, it must be maintained. States invest in standing armies, supply systems, and fortifications designed not for glory, but endurance. This quiet professionalism changes warfare. Battles become fewer, but wars last longer. Strategy outweighs spectacle. Survival depends on logistics, not just courage. The lessons of Vienna, timing, coordination, patience, are absorbed deeply into military thinking. Politically, cooperation becomes easier. The memory of shared danger lingers. Even when alliances fracture, the idea that rivals can unite under threat remains available. This concept slowly evolves into the foundations of modern diplomacy. The Ottoman Empire, meanwhile, enters a long season of adjustment. It remains powerful, but it no longer defines the pace of history in Europe. Reform is discussed often and implemented slowly. Traditions resist change, even as the world around them accelerates. Vienna becomes a reference point for internal debate. Some argue the empire must modernize, others insist continuity is strength. This tension defines Ottoman politics for generations, shaping responses to Russia, Austria, and emerging European powers. The result is not sudden collapse. It is gradual imbalance. Europe innovates faster. Industry, finance, and military organization begin to outpace older systems. Vienna does not cause this shift alone, but it reveals it, making the difference impossible to ignore. Culturally, the event fades into background knowledge. Children learn it as history, not trauma. Its emotional charge softens, replaced by dates and names. Yet the assumptions it created remain active ideas about borders, defense, and identity embedded so deeply they feel natural. This is how turning points work. They are loud once, then silent forever. Vienna 1683 is remembered not because it ended an era, but because it quietly opened another one where empires would rise and fall more slowly, guided by systems rather than sheer force. The world becomes more predictable and more fragile, because once systems replace momentum, failure no longer comes suddenly. It accumulates. When the echoes of the battle finally fade, Vienna 1683 remains behind like a line drawn across time. Not a loud line, not a dramatic one, a quiet boundary. Before Vienna, power in Europe felt like something that moved in one direction. The Ottoman Empire advanced steadily, almost rhythmically, as it had for generations. Cities fell, borders shifted, resistance delayed, but rarely reversed the flow. After Vienna, that sense of inevitability vanished. History no longer felt like a river, it felt like a crossroads. The battle itself ended in a single day, but its meaning unfolded slowly, over decades and centuries. Leaders did not immediately understand what had changed. Ordinary people sensed it first, not through speeches or treaties, but through atmosphere. Through the way fear receded, just slightly. Through the way confidence returned, cautiously, into conversations and decisions. Europe stopped thinking only about survival. It began thinking about direction. This change shaped everything that followed. States invested more heavily in administration, taxation, and standing armies. Power became less about momentum and more about maintenance. Victory was no longer assumed to carry itself forward. It had to be managed carefully, supported by systems that could last beyond a single ruler or campaign. Vienna taught Europe patience. It showed that waiting could be as powerful as attacking. That coordination mattered more than speed. That unity, even temporary and uneasy, could overcome forces that seemed overwhelming. These lessons quietly entered military academies, political philosophy, and statecraft. They were not always spoken aloud, but they were practiced again and again. For the Ottoman Empire, Vienna carried a different meaning. It was not the end of power, nor the beginning of collapse. It was the moment expansion stopped being automatic. The empire continued to function, to fight, to govern millions, but it now did so with awareness of limits. Awareness changes behavior. Caution crept in where confidence once ruled. Debates over reform intensified. Some argued that tradition had carried the empire this far and should not be abandoned. Others saw Vienna as proof that adaptation was necessary. This tension never fully resolved, and it shaped Ottoman history long after the battlefield was forgotten. Empires rarely fall because of a single defeat. They change because of what defeat teaches them. Vienna taught the Ottomans that time was no longer always on their side. For the people of Vienna, the meaning was simpler, yet deeper. The city had stood on the edge of erasure. Its survival became identity. Walls were rebuilt, not just for defense, but remembrance. Streets carried stories. Churches rang bells not only in celebration, but as reminders of how close silence had come. Children grew up knowing that their city existed because of a moment that could have gone differently. This knowledge settled into culture. Preparedness became habit. Order became valued. Fear never fully vanished, but it became organized, controlled, folded into daily life. And beyond Vienna, across Europe, the story spread and softened. It became less about hunger and terror, more about cavalry charges and banners. Myth replaced memory. That is the way history survives. But myths have power. Vienna became shorthand for resistance, for a line that should not be crossed, for the idea that Europe had a center worth defending. This belief influenced politics long after the original threat disappeared, shaping how danger was imagined and described. Even in modern times, the language born there still echoes ideas of borders, civilization, defense, and identity tied to geography rather than people. This is not because Vienna was unique. It is because it was visible. It happened at the right moment, in the right place, where many futures overlapped. What makes Vienna 1683 endure is not the scale of violence, but the clarity of consequence. A delayed assault, a coordinated response, a single charge held until the exact moment it could not be stopped. History is full of battles. It is not full of pivots. Vienna was a pivot. From that point forward, Europe's rise and the Ottoman Empire's long adjustment unfolded together, intertwined but no longer moving in the same direction. The world became less predictable, but more structured, less driven by destiny, more by decision. And that may be the quiet truth at the heart of this story. Vienna did not change the world because someone wanted it to. It changed the world because people hesitated, waited, doubted, adapted and acted at the last possible moment. That is how history really moves, not in certainty, but in pauses. And when the pause ends, everything that follows moves differently.